Okay, we are now recording this session. So again, this is the first of our workshops on how to go green in particular areas of your life. This one focused primarily on how do you go green on campus. So in terms of what we're going to be running through today, I'm going to be doing a presentation. By the way, my name is Ellie Perry. I'm the Sustainability Manager at Cal State Dominguez Hills, in case you didn't know who was talking to you. And I also have with me as my co-presenter, Scarlett Zamora, who's our new Zero Waste Coordinator, also out of the Office of Sustainability. So our goal is to kind of give you the crash course, most applicable overview of, I'm on campus, I'm in a classroom or an office setting. How do I go green while I'm here? So as an Office of Sustainability, during the pandemic, we actually try to consolidate a lot of the top services that are most useful to you, where, if we only had, 5 things that we could have you do on campus, what are they? So I'm basically going to go through that presentation to provide you with a very high level of kind of the most valuable sustainability services you might want to take advantage of. And then because we know it's kind of like, okay, oh yeah, that's a service, right? We're actually going to transition to another presentation where I'll break it down in terms of my daily life as a Toro, in terms of how I use those services, and hopefully provide you some insight on how you can apply those services to your daily life on campus as well. And once I'm done, Scarlett will actually be doing a little bit more of a deep dive on the zero waste component, just because that affects all of us a little bit differently. And it requires a little bit more detail in terms of how to actually sort correctly when on campus. And she'll also be doing our opportunity drawing for reusable Rocket Notebook, which I'll actually be covering during our presentation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, this is our Take Charge video / presentation. There's a video form of this on our YouTube channel in case you want to see the quick 5-minute visual version of this. However, we have, I'm going to break down the presentation component of it for you, just to provide you a little more detail than what's covered in the video. So basically, we hope that all Toros, regardless of, what field you're working in or, what department you're part of, hopefully we can all get on the same page that there is no planet B. This is the one planet we have. Obviously, when we're doing daily activities, living our lives, we want to make sure we're as sustainable as possible so that we have a planet Earth that we can all live and thrive on, be able to pass on to future generations. So basically, these 5 actions are designed to help you take care of the planet that we have when you're here on campus, and try to break this down for you in an easier way. So our first Toro tip, if you will, is to reduce and reuse, then recycle. If you all are familiar with the 3 R's, the Captain Planets, they always say, oh, reduce, reuse, and recycle, as if it's all equivalent to each other, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to recycle this, so it's okay that I'm using this item now. But really, this is based on the idea that reduce, reuse, and recycle is a hierarchy. So basically, you want to reduce and reuse first before you ever have to end up in a situation where you have to throw something away and then be able to recycle it. So that's kind of the mentality we want all Toros to adopt when coming to campus, or really trying to incorporate reducing waste and reusing items, as opposed to constantly bringing in single-use disposable various consumables, right? And trying to rethink the way that we do that when we're operating on campus. One of the ways that you can do that, especially for those of you who love to go to the local student union and get your daily lunch and breakfast or soups or whatever else, we wanted to re-promote that there is a Toro Token and Soup Buddy program from Toro Fresh, which also applies to DH Sports Lounge as well. Effectively, what happens is that you pay once for a $5 bronze token. And the way that you do that operationally is that you go up to the line, and before they put it into that little single-use clamshell container, you say, oh, actually, I want a reusable container. So if this is your first time, doing the Toro Token program, you're basically going to check out, and then they'll ask you, oh, do you have a Toro Token? If you don't have one yet, you say, no, I don't have one. I'm going to buy one now. They charge you an extra $5, and then you take away your container. Eat your meal, you have this dirty container. And then when you go back up to the front, to the cashier, you can hand them the dirty container and they'll give you a token back. And once you receive that token, it's a nice little portable token. You can take it back with you. And the next time you're in line, when they say, okay, you want your reusable container, you just exchange it for the token. So in any case, you either have a nice portable token or you have a clean container you can use for your various eating activities. The same exchange works for the little cute soup buddies. So those little tiny soup containers, it's the same exchange. So you can either exchange it for one of those big clamshells or one of the soup containers at any time, and they'll always give you a nice fresh container or your Toro token back. And Scarlett will be covering more of that service too, but just wanted to let you know about that particular service. Another way that you can incorporate reducing and reusing is taking advantage of all their lovely campus water fountains. So we now have 100% coverage for all campus stateside buildings. So basically everywhere but the LSU, there's literally a bottle filler on every single water fountain. So there's never a situation where you have to worry about, oh, I'm not going to be able to refill my nice reusable container, right? So definitely bringing a reusable water bottle as part of your daily habits is huge in terms of cutting down that plastic water bottle waste from constantly buying new water bottles. And within the LSU, they actually I think they have one water bottle filler on the second floor, and then we're actually working with them to replace another one out on the first floor. So hopefully by the end of this semester, there'll only be one holdout, which is that third floor conference room area. But in terms of coverage, literally every other campus water fountain anywhere you go on the CSUDH campus. So that's pretty good coverage. And in terms of using reusables as well, because that's also part of the reduce and reuse, but actively bringing your reusable items, right? So what I mean is, you're actually remembering to bring your reusable coffee cups, your reusable straws, your bags, et cetera, just being creative about replacing all of the single-use items that you regularly receive, and just replacing them with your own reusable versions, because that cuts down the waste on quite a bit. And many of these things are actually available at the bookstore as well. So if you're ever like, oh, I don't have a reusable straw, or I don't have a nice reusable cup, all of those are actually at the campus bookstore. So next time you go shopping, you can easily integrate that as part of your shopping to make sure you can have a nice reusable item instead of constantly having to use the disposables. Another aspect too, also tied to zero waste, is pitching in. So basically we have these beautiful zero waste bins on campus, but we really do rely on our campus users to actually take the extra step of sorting. Because if you just end up dumping everything into the landfill, it doesn't really help us that we have this nice zero waste system. So really taking a second to understand, like, how do you pitch in? How do you sort correctly when throwing things away on campus? Also, we have a nice little PSA from Teddy Toro that we'd like to share with you. All right, so I don't believe any students were harmed in the making of that video, but hopefully that gets the point of, before you just kind of blindly throw things away, making sure it gets into the correct bin, and that's a way we can all contribute. And Scarlett's going to go into more detail about the zero waste program and what goes on into which bin. But essentially we have three streams, right? There's a compost bin, which accepts food scraps, essentially anything that you can put in your mouth or did put in your mouth at one point, that all goes in there. Currently, our hauler does not accept any kind of packaging or compostable ware in that receptacle. So it really is designated for just food at this point. For recycling, kind of rules of thumb is any sort of dry paper, cardboard, bottles and cans, hard plastics, metal and aluminum, glass, like very high grade materials, right? And also to go back to the compost, because I mentioned some people are kind of grossed out by like, oh, this is like food scraps, or I have a lot of them. If it's in a clear plastic bag or liner, you can actually throw it away in the plastic bag, and it'll just be popped at the facility, and they'll dispose of that separately. However, we don't, if it's sealed, where it's like, a dark bag or something like that, where they can't see into it, they'll actually assume that it's contaminated. And then they'll actually just throw the whole thing away, which kind of defeats the purpose. So just as a caveat for that. Also for landfill, it's pretty much everything else. So this is a lot of like the packaging, right? It's like styrofoam, chip bags, film plastics, like flexible plastics, all of that in terms of the landfill or stuff that can't be recycled and needs to go into the landfill. And so basically, just making sure that you're aware of the categories and that, you kind of find like what you're throwing away and making sure it gets into the right receptacle when you're sorting through that. And in terms of take charge tip number 3, another big way you can help the planet is grazing responsibly. So actually making more sustainable food choices. And this is such a large topic. If you actually join us next week, we have a whole webinar just on how do you eat more sustainably, how do you package food, how do you make better food choices. But as a rule of thumb, a couple ways you can really help. Is actually shopping at the farmers market. So if you didn't know, there is a weekly farmers market that we co-sponsor with Basic Needs that happens every Tuesday on the South Walkway, 9 a.m. to 3. And it's a really great source of fresh farmers market produce, which is huge for a lot of our students. So another big reason why it's good to shop at the farmers market, in addition to being able to get fresh produce for yourself, frequenting those vendors basically ensures that that service will remain open for in-need students as well. So anyone who's on CalFresh benefits and receives EBT, the farmers market is currently the only location on campus they can spend those benefits. So if they're in need, this is a really critical resource for being able to spend those dollars on campus and be able to get fresh produce to feed themselves and their families. Additionally, our organizer is very favorable in terms of also offering a market match program where they actually match the amount of EBT dollars coming in up to $10. So if an EBT user comes in and wants to spend $10 at the market, the farmers market will actually give them another $10 to go ahead and double their value, so they can have their dollars stretch further while at the market. So it's a really great service that a lot of people aren't aware of. So, but you can feel good about shopping at the market because that benefits those vendors and make sure that they keep coming back to provide those services on a weekly basis. Obviously, shopping local and eating at the prepared food is good too. But, in terms of really focusing on produce purchases, that's really where your dollar makes the biggest impact from a social standpoint. So I wanted to let you know about that. And also in general, there's a lot of talk, right? Everyone says like, oh, going vegan or meatless Mondays, like why do sustainability people talk about that, right? So just to break it down as like a general rule of thumb, eating vegetable-based or plant-based diets is just better for the planet than meat. There's quantitatively, you can't get around it. I know for a lot of people, meat is delicious. I'm married to a carnivore. I totally understand. But, really trying to incorporate more of a plant-based diet has a huge impact on your personal carbon emissions when it comes to your dietary impacts. And I understand too that like sometimes you can't always like go completely meatless. You're kind of in situations where you're forced into picking out a protein, right? Or you just really, really want that protein enhancement. Basically, the smaller the animal is, the less environmental impact there is. So a good example is like, okay, maybe instead of the full on, beef cheeseburger, maybe we just switch to a smaller animal, like a chicken, right? Or even like going pescatarian, like trying to switch to fish, right? Like not always going for like the hardcore big animal red meat diet with every single meal, like, and actually making a few sustainable switches every chance you get, it can make a big difference. One of the nice stats that I like to throw out there is that switching just from like beef to chicken for a meal will actually save you 4 pounds of CO2 every serving. So so little choices like that do make a big difference when you're trying to be more sustainable on campus. And next up, another thing that we want Poros to do as part of our take charge tip is to watch waste. And also, if you're the last out, turn the lights out, right? So in terms of our utility consumption as a campus, we spend millions of dollars keeping the lights on and the water running and the HVAC and all of those things, which people don't appreciate, right? Like we see $100 energy bill at home and we freak out. Our energy bill as a campus is closer to $100,000 every month. So the more that we can reduce and cut off that waste, the more savings that we receive as a campus, and also keep the operational costs down for our students. So we really encourage you that if you notice things like, water leaks or, hey, this like faucet keeps running, these lights are malfunctioning, they won't turn off. Just making sure you report that to facilities work control so we as a department can come and fix that, rather than just leaving the lights and the water running perpetually because we don't know about that being damaged, right? And also just that user ownership of like, okay, if I'm the last one out of the room and no one's obviously here, maybe I should turn the lights off, right? So those are all best practices that we can integrate as Toros to help our campus out. Also, another aspect is that even though the Office of Sustainability doesn't manage alternative transportation, that's under parking services, it doesn't mean that there aren't good resources for, kind of greening your ride, right? So if you carpool, if you take the bus, there's a lot of great, or you're driving an electric vehicle, there's a lot of great resources you can find on the Rideshare website to get recognized for those practices, and also find more resources to make it easier to take alternative transportation, more sustainable transportation to get to campus on a regular basis. And with that, that's kind of the high level crash course version of like, if you only need to know 5 things about the sustainability services available to you, that's kind of our top priority. And obviously we have a lot more information on our website if you ever want to visit on how to take charge as a Toro, or some of the other great services that we have. So with that, I'm going to exit out of this presentation. And Scarlett, can you tell me if there's anything in the chat? I'm having a hard time seeing if there was a question. Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Sorry. No, it was just a comment about
Okay.
When you had mentioned making that switch from meat to chicken.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm glad that's helping then. All right, then. Okay, so we saw the formal version, right, of the, hey, these are all the services available to you, right? So this is actually a more personal reflection of like a day in the life, right? So if you've ever wondered like, oh, what do the sustainability people do on a daily basis in terms of like actually using these services? I'll kind of walk you through a sample day when I'm on campus in terms of like what kind of decisions do you make, right, on a daily basis that where you can actually be a little more sustainable. So to that end, the first thing that we always talk about is like, well, obviously you need to get to campus, right? So I am ashamed to admit that I do not have an electric car yet. I am like most of you where I have not been able to afford a car in quite some time. I'm actually personally driving in a 20-year-old Toyota 4Runner, which actually runs great. We maintain it really well, all that stuff. So, and I'm sure many of you are kind of in the same situation where, you kind of inherited these older vehicles. You're kind of like, well, I can't afford an electric car or a new car in general right now. And that's fine, like no shame, right? It's what you need to get to campus. So I just want to reassure you that in terms of the sustainability aspect, it doesn't mean that you're limited, right? If you actually maintain your vehicles, you can always actually decluttering, right? So all these things that improve fuel efficiency, right? Like not just leaving boxes or tons of junk in your car because that weights it down and reduces its fuel efficiency. Things like making sure your tires are properly inflated, and that you're doing regular maintenance on whatever vehicle you have. All of that actually contributes to your fuel efficiency and actually helps you in terms of not paying those crazy gas prices, right? So the more fuel efficient you can be, the better it is for the environment, better it is for your pocketbook. So that's just a note I wanted to share with you. I do have an electric vehicle coming, hopefully in the next month. I've been on back order for about 1.5 years now, but supposedly it's going to show up in the next month. So hopefully I'll be rolling around in an electric vehicle like some of the more advanced sustainability people are. And if you are in that situation, because if you haven't heard, there is a kind of like these state mandates now, right? Saying by 2035, there will be no new cars available that aren't electric, right? So at some point, we're probably going to need to, get into the electric vehicle ownership mode, right? Where it's like, okay, we're going to be driving a lot more electric vehicles. We're going to be using a lot more electric vehicles to get to campus. So in terms of our EV infrastructure, right now we have about 12 charging spaces like scattered throughout the campus. Most of them are in lot 3 on that far west bank. And we as a campus have acknowledged that that is not enough spaces. So we're actually in negotiations this week to finish a grant application with Edison to add 75 new charging stations to lot 3 on the east side. So if all goes well with the paperwork, we should actually be getting those as a campus for free because it's part of a grant program. However, the cost of energy has gone up to the point where we can't continue to just let people charge for free off our campus, because it's something like 25 cents a kilowatt hour, right, for people to be able to charge there. It's just like fuel. So basically, as part of that project, we'll also be converting all the spaces into a charge system, just trying to break even, right? So just whatever the cost of energy is, you know, and then being able to cover that, and it'll be through an app essentially. But just wanted to let you know that the more EV infrastructure is coming to the campus, it is part of the long range plan to make sure we're equipped to accommodate all these new electric vehicles that are coming to campus. So, so if that's on the horizon for you, you have some resources. The more other options too, right? So if you're actively carpooling, or you think that might be an option where, you know, you have similar schedule with a fellow student or staff member that you can go and take advantage of that, the parking office does offer discounts for that. So there's actually or benefits. So if you register for a carpool permit, they will actually give you more preferred parking or access to more preferred parking if you have that special carpool permit that you've registered for. Additionally, if you're someone who takes the bus or metro regularly, they offer a pretty significant discount on tap cards, something like 51% in terms of basically discounting the tap card so that you get more bang for your buck when you register through the parking office. And again, as we mentioned in the Take Charge video, it's all available on the rideshare website in terms of how to register for those benefits. And you can also visit the parking office too to find out more. So that's just our commute to get to campus, right? So once you're actually there, I know it's kind of your most people's daily tradition that you get your morning cup of coffee, right? For me personally, I make sure I drink my coffee at home because there's no waste. I don't have to worry about brushing my teeth after I get to camp, all that stuff. So I'm just like, I'm happy with my little cup of coffee that I drink at home and then get to campus. For those of you I know where it's like, no, you need your morning cup of coffee and you can't get it at home. There is a reusable cup discount at all of the campus eateries. So if you're going to Union Grind and the Starbucks, you are supposed to be able to bring your reusable cup and they will give you 10 cents off of that cup and fill up directly. So it saves you a little bit of money and also cuts down on that single-use coffee cup that you're getting every single time. Another thing to keep in mind too is that, if you're going out, you go to McDonald's, you go to Starbucks, you get your coffee, right? Or you just have that single use cup. Just make sure that you recycle appropriately. A good rule of thumb that even Scarlett was training me up on is that if it's a hot coffee, like where it's like the paper cup with the liner on the inside, that's not recyclable and you have to throw it away. But if you kind of get those harder plastic, like cold cups, right? You get the morning Frappuccino or iced mocha or whatever. You can actually recycle that plastic Starbucks cup and just make sure you throw away the straw because that's not recyclable. So those are basically your two big rule of thumb options when it comes to your coffee on campus or when you're bringing it from elsewhere. So that's the first decision of the day. Second decision of the day is general hydration, right? So this is my reusable water bottle. I don't know if you can see it. Basically, it goes with me everywhere. It's like my wallet, my cell phone, my keys, and my water bottle everywhere I go, right? As I mentioned in the video, we have free bottle fillers, basically on every campus water fountain. So you never have to worry about buying more or refilling. So it's a huge part of cutting down on that daily, why would you pay $2 for a plastic water bottle situation and also worry about all that extra waste. So that's another daily habit that helps a lot. Another thing that when you're walking around, right? So, I've gotten my coffee, I did my water, basically, just doing I don't know where my screen went, but here we go. Another thing is as you're walking around the campus or you're entering certain buildings, something to think about is that there's a lot of wasted energy that goes into doors that are propped open to the outside, right? A good example is that if you were at home and you had the AC running, and your kid or your friend or something just leaves open the front door and just lets it run there, right? And your AC is just pumping and pumping, trying to cool the space while someone has the front door open. That's exactly what's happening on our campus buildings, right? So whether we're heating or we're cooling, if you basically leave doors that lead to the exterior just open, all of that nice conditioned air is just going to go out and basically condition Mother Nature, and again drive those huge utility bills that we were talking about. And a good example of the more recent effect was that if you remember that there was that massive heat wave in September, the campus experienced something like a 30% energy like spike in terms of people just propping open doors because they were hot, instead of actually trying to place work control orders or like, make sure that their AC was comfortable. And a lot of people prop open their doors thinking like, oh, okay, well, this will help because I'm hot, or, oh no, it's cold, like that sort of thing. It actually makes the AC and heating less efficient and the delivery worse than if you just kept the door closed. So if you want an actual comfortable conditioned space, we really encourage people to place a hot/cold ticket. Kenny over at Central Plant is very, very responsive in terms of taking care of those because they want to make sure users are comfortable and that their systems are working, right? So you can place that through the Work Control website, or even just call Work Control directly to let them know, hey, I'm having, it's too hot, it's too cold, whatever the issues are, to make sure you're comfortable. So once you kind of close the doors on all your friends and family or friends and colleagues as you're walking down the hallway, another big thing that I know that we go through is kind of the paperless question, right? So, so as a university, we tend to go through a lot of paper, especially like on a daily basis, right? So if you're a student, you're in classes, you're trying to take notes, you're a staff member, you're going to meetings, taking notes. One of those best practices is like, oh, well, maybe I can bring my laptop or computer and just kind of eliminate the paper process, right? Another cool technology that a lot of people use is like the reusable Rocket Notebook, which we actually are offering as our opportunity drawing today. We get a lot of good reviews from people who are able to just, it's basically a reusable notebook where you just write your notes and then you take a photo of it and it scans to the app. And then you can erase it and reuse it indefinitely. So it kind of electronically converts your notes and drawings and whatever else you put into your notebook, and you get to use that notebook indefinitely instead of constantly buying new sheets to do that. Another important point too is that paperless doesn't mean like no paper at all. There's always ways that you can kind of reduce your paper consumption without necessarily like completely eliminating paper as well, which helps in terms of the environmental impact. So some good best practices that I use a lot is just double siding. So if I have a set of notes or something, just making sure that you're always using both sides when you're printing, double siding copies and things like that. And also I get handed a lot of paper just because like, even though I'm trying to go paperless, not everyone's on board with me. So I always like to use that as reuse it first and then recycle. So I'll, use the other back for like scratch paper or more notes or something, and then put it in the recycle bin instead of just taking these clean sheets and then dumping them into the recycle directly. And you can kind of see on that top picture, that's my little scratch paper pile that I can use to reuse before I recycle that. Also, another option too is when you're printing copies, just doing half and quarter sheets, right? Like what if you need multiple copies of something, there's always the option of putting like formatting it. So maybe it's like 2 or 4 copies on a single page, and then you can cut it up and be able to have multiple copies of the same document instead of full sheets every single time. So that's another tip that I use a lot for our own tabling events and things like that. Also, if you're in a position to organize events, we do have a green event checklist on our website in the zero waste section, which has a lot of other tips on how to go green when it comes to event planning specifically. Well, some of the best practices we promote there for paperless specifically is QR codes. So making those instead of like, hey, 50 copies here, just scan the QR code, right? And also centralizing copies of your information. So you're only handing out 1 copy that gets shared around instead of like 50 copies of the same thing, right? And a lot of people have asked like kind of like, oh, did our paper consumption actually go down during the pandemic, right? Because we converted to mostly virtual environment. So I just thought this is kind of some fun data that we came across where basically pre-pandemic, we were going through about 93 cases of paper every month. And then once the pandemic hit, we dropped to 28 cases every month. And you would think after we came back in person that there would be this huge spike, but it really only started going up an extra half case every month. So it actually shows that after there was almost no change in consumption after coming back from the pandemic, which shows that, hey, if you integrate paperless processes into your daily life, it actually does help a lot on the paper consumption. So just some interesting trends from our campus in terms of the direction we're going. Also, let's say I wrapped up my morning, I'm heading down via my golf cart down to the farmer's market, and I see that the irrigation's going crazy, right? It's leaking all over the place. It's like spraying everywhere. Clearly something's wrong, right? So again, that's a good example of like, okay, like anytime I see leaks or maintenance or hazards and things like that, just call Work Control, right? So I can call Patricia over at Work Control, say, hey, the irrigation's going crazy, and she can create a work order to go assign that to grounds to go ahead and check on that to make sure we're not constantly just like hemorrhaging our utilities. So that's an example of like what you might see. Additionally, a big thing is going to the farmers market, right? So we kept emphasizing like, hey, this is a good way to support the local economy, make sure that we're bringing produce to food deserts, and buying produce specifically to make sure that CalFresh and market match benefits continue for in-need students. But another thing too is when you're shopping at the market, a good practice is just to refuse all the single-use bags and straws and utensils that the vendors are trying to give you because they want to be helpful, right? So it makes a huge difference in terms of just bringing your reusable bag like you would if you're going to the grocery store. If you see the middle picture, that's my bag. I actually have a little farmer's market bag that I take with me everywhere. I always bring my reusable utensil set that, you know, actually sustainability will be giving out next week. So you can come visit us at the booth if you want to sign a pledge and get one. I also got these reusable produce bags from like Amazon, which I use for everything, right? So when I pick up my head of lettuce from the farmer, I don't have to use one of his plastic bags to take my stuff home. And that really cuts down on the waste from the market. So if I bring all these things, generally I don't have any packaging that I end up having to throw away after the fact. If you didn't know, I always visit the Office of Sustainability booth, obviously, because I'm invested, but we do have giveaways weekly and useful info. So it's always good to stop by. And in the picture, you can actually see them right in the corner, right across from the fresh produce. So definitely swing by as part of your daily activities. And in terms of the kind of zero waste aspect, what that looks like for me around lunch, right? So when you're eating lunch, I personally pack my lunch 90% of the time, unless I'm going to the farmer's market. So I'm always bringing my Tupperware, my reusable utensils, my lunch bag, my beeswax wraps, which are another type of wrap. A more commercial version is like one that I use is this one. Where it's just like an Amazon like plastic, you know, like wrap basically, where you can just keep reusing that instead of just getting these like single-use Ziplocs and things like that, which helps a lot. Also, I use the Toro token whenever I do go out to the campus eatery, so that makes a huge impact on those clamshell containers. And also just making sure that I'm always sorting correctly when it comes to the zero waste bin. And again, if you use lots of reusables, you kind of eliminate a lot of the waste that you have to worry about in terms of sorting. So again, like that daily cup, the straws, the plastic utensils, the takeout containers, all of that stuff is kind of, eliminated when you bring the right amount of reusables. So just something to keep in mind. So at the end of the lunch period, I go back to my office and I noticed like, oh, okay, I'm running low on certain supplies or I have an overage of others, right? Another service that's really helpful that we've implemented over the last year or so is a continuation of our pop-up thrift events. So Scarlett actually runs these, but we've now created a schedule where the first and the last farmers market of every semester, as well as move in and move out for housing, we bring the pop-up thrift trailer where any Toro can come and either donate things that they want to give away or pick up items that they want for free. So it's a way to keep things out of the landfill, especially since there's so many of us with like extra clothing and household goods and school and office supplies. So it's a way to kind of do a community share for those items and keep it out of the landfill. Also for staff specifically, when you're ordering office supplies, I know a lot of us like to go to Amazon and get our own pens and pencils and all that stuff. But if you actually go through your administrator who has access to the Staples account, there's actually a built-in CSU green buying program, as well as CSU requirements for recycled content that get automatically applied to any Staples purchases we make as a campus. So if you're fine with waiting on your office supplies, highly recommend using the Staples and the admin people who are actually plugged into that to get your office supplies on a daily basis. Almost getting to the end here. So at the end of the day, you're checked out, you're trying to close up. A good practice is always to turn off equipment and lights. So a lot of us have those peripherals, right? So it's like, I know it's actually better to turn off the tower as well, but I know IT says like, hey, leave it on. But it doesn't mean you can't turn off your monitors and the printers and other things that don't need to run while you're not around. And also our campus has a lot of automated sensors where they'll turn off the light if there's no movement. But there's still some holdouts, right? You still run into those classrooms where it's like, hey, it's flip switch. It's not going to like you really turn off unless I physically turn it off. And again, practicing last out, lights out. If you're the last one to leave the office, last one to leave the classroom, just taking a second to hit those switches to help cut down on that utility consumption. And yeah, and that's pretty much the daily life. Obviously, I'm part of the Office of Sustainability, but if as a staff or faculty or student, there's some other options for ongoing leadership to get involved with sustainability on our campus. We have a university sustainability committee that's open to student, staff, and faculty. So if this is really something you're passionate about and want to be more engaged in, we have signups on our engagement section of our website where you can just register and say, hey, I'm interested in joining the committee. And they meet once a month during the academic year. For students specifically, we have a sustainability club for that purpose, available on Toro Link, just like all the other clubs. They meet twice a month during the school year with virtual and in-person options every month. And for staff and faculty, we just wrapped up our last Sustainability Star program, which concluded at the end of February, but we also have them every year. So if you're interested in signing up, we have one sign up on our website as well as our email. And essentially it's an annual training program where in the month of February, we really break down what it means to be sustainable as a staff or faculty member. Let's see. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of major resources and walkthrough. To make sure that we stick to time, I am going to table questions at the end, unless you'd like to drop them in the chat. And I guess with that, I'll pass it off to Scarlett so she can cover her zero waste presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellie. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scarlett. I'm the Zero Waste Coordinator with the Office of Sustainability. And today we're going to go into the day of the life of a Toro, and that goes for all faculty, staff, and students. So you might have seen these bins around campus, but we do have centralized zero waste stations now. We steered away from desk side bins and just overall trash bins, right? So centralized zero waste stations can be found in hallways, department and office spaces. And Slim Jim zero waste stations can be found in some laboratory spaces as well as break rooms. And you've probably seen a cardboard station either in one of the floors of the library or the 3rd or 4th floor of Welch Hall. And those are serviced by me twice a week. And we have the exterior zero waste bin stations here. So these are scattered all across the campus walkways, courtyards, and outside buildings. And now we're going to go into specifics as to what goes in each of these waste streams, right? So I took the time to gather some items that we commonly see or have encountered every day. And I'll go through each and every one of them. So this is everything that belongs in the landfill. If you've gone to the Union Grind or Starbucks, you probably came across it. Excuse me, the sandwich bag here. So pastries are usually put in here. That is trash, although it's a paper product, as Ellie mentioned in her previous presentation. It's considered food soiled paper, and it's also waxy, so that's why it is trash. You would think that this container here, because it's made out of paper, would be recyclable. If you notice inside of the container, there is a lining, a coated lining of plastic that keeps the container from leakage and even keeps your food warm. So we would throw that away. Any type of wrapper, such as the Subway wrappers or the chili sauce packets from Panda Express, are considered trash. And then, as Ellie had also mentioned, Starbucks cups. So this is another product that just because it's made out of a paper product doesn't mean it's considered recycle. Again, it's lined with a very thin coated layer of plastic that insulates the liquid and keeps your content warm. And there are some confusions around bioplastics, right? So as you can see the container here, if you were to go to Toro Fresh, your food would be served in this container if you don't use your Toro token. They also have this bioplastic cutlery and then these straws that say they're compostable. The reason why they're trash and do not belong in the compost bin is because they're made out of some type of like corn petroleum. When food waste ends up at the material recovery facility, that material gets turned into compost in a month's time, whereas bioplastics take longer to decompose in around 6 months. So because especially with the new California state law that just passed, SB 1383, stating that food waste can no longer go in the trash. Can only imagine the amount of waste that the waste haulers are getting, right? So they don't have enough time to, turn that product over into compost. But packaging material, napkins, chip bags, and your styrofoam containers are all considered trash, including pens as well. So hazardous material, I find some of this material in the trash at times. Light bulbs and chemical waste is considered hazardous waste. And anything that you plug into the wall, such as your heater, fan, and if it has a motor or lithium battery, it's considered electronic waste. And how to dispose of your e-waste or hazardous waste here on campus. This is geared more towards faculty and staff. So when universal waste drop-off locations like fluorescent light bulbs, for example, when facilities removes defective or old damaged fluorescent lamps, we do place those in designated barrels in our universal waste shed. And some of the battery drop-off locations are in the Visitors Information Center entrance, the Welch Hall second floor, LaCourte Hall, room E303, the College of Education right at the entrance, and then my office, NSMF 127. You can also call work control for all other universal hazardous waste. The phone number is there. You can also reach the EHS office as well. So anything and everything we can recycle is here. And this, like, say, for example, you go to Subway and you get a large cup, that type of plastic is recyclable. As Ali also mentioned in her previous presentation, and I did not include in the slide, is the clear plastic cup that you would get at Starbucks. So as long as the content in there is dumped out, no ice, no liquid, it is okay to put in the recycling bin. Notebooks, your cardboard, junk mail, or just files that are sitting at your desk can go in the recycling bin. If you do have shredded paper, just make sure it's in a bag. And plastic clamshells. So if there's a little bit of food residue in there, that's fine. Just the cleaner, the better. Glass, scrap metals, such as your pen holder here, this is considered recyclable. Soda cans, and then your paper bags too. And also, the one thing that got me into the job that I now have is yogurt cups. So as a student, I didn't know where that material went. Come to find out, it's also recyclable. So what goes into the organics bin? So anything and everything that we eat goes in here. Your French fries, your leftover Subway sandwich, pastas, sweets, fruits and veggie scraps, and cooked and uncooked foods such as food from Panda Express would go into this bin. At this time, we are not accepting any food soiled paper or any type of compostable products, just food. So I wanted to give every table its own slide because they have a mixture of either trash or recyclable material. So if you guys want to go ahead and take the time and put in the comments what you would consider recycle, what you would consider trash, and then if there's anything uneaten here in this picture, what you would put in the compost bin. So I'll give you guys like maybe 10-15 seconds to do that, analyze the picture, and then I'll go over the answers shortly. All right, so these bottles here are recyclable as long as they're empty. These food containers here are a hard type of plastic, so they're actually recyclable as long as there's no food residue in there. These are wrappers. They would be considered trash. And then if any of these containers have some sort of food, you would put that in the compost bin. So what's wrong with this picture? The other day I went to Chick-fil-A and got my meal. And sometimes I do see that if you're going out of campus and you're bringing food here, everything is just put into one bag, right? That would not be the best practice approach. You would want to take the time to separate everything. I know it's one extra step, but as a core value of Atoro and being zero waste, as long as your paper bag is clean to the best of its ability with little to no oil residue, it can go in the recycling bin. Took that extra step to separate the plastic lid, and then the cup, because it's made out of styrofoam, goes in the trash. The cardboard container that my nuggets came in goes in the trash, as well as that wrapper that my brownie came in. And then say you go to Waba Girl down the street, and you have these containers, right? So before you recycle these containers, you can reuse the containers as leftover storage containers like I do, or reuse them to pack your lunch. And I still have some of these containers from who knows when. So these are also best practices. I'm a big person that loves to garden, like indoor garden. So I use some of these containers as like a mini greenhouse to start seeds as well. So some people or some faculty and staff still have their desk side bins. As a reminder, custodians are no longer servicing these bins nor providing liners. So my best practice, this is an example of my trash and recycle. I walk my waste out to the nearest zero waste station, and I dump the recycle and recycle, trash and trash, and I save the liners because there's no need to be reusing or wasting liners each time, right? So these liners have been here since I started January 1st, and I only have to dump this maybe once a month. And these are different types of ways you can reduce on campus. So as Ali mentioned, hydration stations, path water bottles, recycling your batteries at the recycling pickup locations, the Toro token and dining discounts. So as Ali mentioned, I have my little soup buddy here that I got my oatmeal in this morning, and I use my reusable cutlery here too. It's courtesy provided by our office. And then on printer and cartridge recycling. So toner and inkjet cartridges may be recycled through a request to campus work order control. They must be placed in the original packaging. Then this would be considered hazardous waste. So hazardous waste and electronic waste are actually illegal to put in the trash. And I'll take this a step further, when that material ends up in the trash, we have a garbage man come pick up our waste, right? They have compressors inside the trucks, and if that material is compressed, it can actually ignite a fire that puts the driver at risk. The driver has to offload all of that waste from the truck. The city fire department gets involved, and it becomes a thing, right? So let's not be that person and recycle properly. And this is an example of one of the pop-ups that we did at housing at the beginning of the year. So this is what our setup looks like. As Ali mentioned, these are at the beginning and the end of the semester, as well as at the farmers markets. And if it's anything that you should take away from my presentation, say no to single-use plastic. And anybody have any questions?
Okay, so I guess also, Scarlett, did you want to do the opportunity drawing?
Yes.
Well, you have everyone's attention. And then if you have questions, feel free to start typing them in the chat or queuing them up. And as soon as Scarlett does the opportunity drawing, then we can, spend the rest of the time on Q&A. And also going to pause there, stop the recording for the people on YouTube. So we'll go ahead and push